In 1865, a British economist named William Stanley Jevons noticed something that made absolutely no sense. Steam engines were getting dramatically more efficient, burning less coal per unit of work. So logically, Britain should have been using less coal, right? I'm here to tell you the exact opposite happened. Coal consumption exploded because when you make something cheaper and more efficient, people don't just do the same amount of it for less money. They do vastly more of it. That single insight, now called Jevons Paradox, is the most important framework for understanding what AI is about to do to your organization, your industry, and your workforce. And if you're a leader who's still thinking about AI as a cost-cutting tool, you're already behind. Let's break it down. So here is the core idea in plain English. When a technology makes a resource drastically cheaper to use, total consumption of that resource tends to go up, not down. Economists call this the rebound effect. Jevons saw it with coal, but we've seen this pattern repeat over and over again throughout history. Take the printing press. It made producing text absurdly cheap. Everyone assumed fewer scribes would be needed. Instead, literacy spread, new genres were invented, and demand for writers and publishers exploded. The total volume of written content grew by orders of magnitude. Same thing with spreadsheets. They were supposed to wipe out accounting jobs. One person could do the work of a small team. Instead, cheap financial modeling meant companies ran far more models, and the number of analyst jobs grew right alongside the technology. This pattern is remarkably consistent. Efficiency doesn't reduce demand, it detonates it. Now, let's connect this to what is actually happening with artificial intelligence, because Jevons Paradox isn't just a cute historical footnote, it's playing out in real time. The cost of inference has dropped roughly 92% since early 2023, and rather than shrinking the market for intelligence, that collapse in cost has triggered an explosion of demand. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said it himself after DeepSeek launched their low-cost model. Jevons Paradox strikes again. As AI gets more efficient and accessible, we will see its use skyrocket. And the data backs it up. AI capital expenditure is now running at roughly $650 billion globally. Software engineering postings, the very role everyone said AI would eliminate first, actually grew 11% year over year going into 2026. After an initial dip when companies absorbed productivity gains, demand snapped back harder than before. Here's why this happens with AI specifically. Physical resources like coal have natural limits, but cognitive tasks, there's essentially unlimited demand for analysis, content creation, strategic planning, personalization, and problem solving. Every organization has decisions it wishes it could make with better data, more content it wishes it could produce, more customer interactions it wishes it could personalize, more scenarios it wishes it could model. AI is unlocking a nearly infinite backlog of work that was never economically viable before. And this is where the opportunity lives for smart organizations. Now, I'd be doing you a disservice if I painted this as purely optimistic, because the workforce data tells a more complicated story. The World Economic Forum projects that by 2030, 92 million roles will be displaced globally, but 170 million new roles will be created for a net gain of about 78 million positions. At the macro level, that sounds great, but the transition is where the pain lives. Job losses tend to be sharp and localized. A call center gets automated overnight, an accounting department gets restructured in a quarter. That is immediate. That's visible. That is painful. But Jevon-style job creation, that unfolds slowly and unevenly, often in different regions, different industries, and different skill categories than the ones that shrank. The data is clear on who bears the most risk. Roles built on repetition, predictable tasks face the highest displacement: customer service, data entry, basic administrative work. Meanwhile, roughly 77% of newly created AI-driven roles require a master's degree or equivalent experience. That is a massive skills gap. So yes, at the aggregate level, AI creates more work than it destroys. But at an individual level, if you're a leader who isn't actively managing this transition for your people, you're going to lose talent, lose institutional knowledge, and face serious organizational disruption. That gap between displacement and creation is where companies fall apart. Smart organizations plan for it. So if Jevons Paradox tells us that AI will expand the total scope of valuable work, and the data tells us that the transition will be uneven and painful, what do smart organizations actually do with that information? They do three things. First, they redesign roles around the 70% AI can't do. By 2030, an estimated 30% of tasks in most roles will be automated. Organizations that win aren't the ones trying to automate people out. They're the ones redesigning roles to center on judgment, context, relationship, and strategic decision making. Things that AI is worst at. Think about it this way. When AI handles your data analysis, your analysts don't become redundant. They become strategists, freed up to ask better questions, interpret nuance, and make higher stakes decisions. The job gets better, not smaller. Second, they treat upskilling as a core business function and not an HR afterthought. The World Economic Forum reports that 85% of employers plan to prioritize workforce upskilling by 2030. But here's a sobering number. An estimated 120 million workers globally are at medium-term risk of redundancy, specifically because they're unlikely to receive the reskilling that they need. The gap isn't in recognizing the problem, it's in executing the solution. And the organizations that treat continuous learning like they treat revenue targets, with real budgets, real accountability, and real timelines, are the ones that will retain their best people while their competitors hemorrhage talent. Third, they expand into work that makes AI newly viable. This is Jevon's play. When intelligence gets cheap, the smart move isn't to do the same work with fewer people, it's to pursue opportunities that were never economically feasible before. That market analysis you couldn't justify the headcount for, now it's viable. That customer segment you couldn't afford to personalize for, now it's reachable. That product idea that required too much R&D and modeling, now it's testable. Organizations that understand Jevons Paradox don't shrink. They expand into the new frontier that cheap intelligence opens up. Here's what it all comes down to. There are two types of organizations emerging right now. The first type sees AI as a headcount reduction tool. They automate tasks, lay off workers, and pocket the short-term savings. They're playing defense. The second type sees AI as a demand multiplier. They understand that when you make intelligence cheap, you don't do less thinking. You unlock entirely new categories of valuable work. They redesign roles. They reskill their people. They expand into newly viable markets. They play offense. History tells us, from coal to printing presses to spreadsheets, the second group wins every single time. The question isn't whether your industry will be transformed by AI. It will. The question is whether you'll be the organization that captures the expanded demand or the one that gets disrupted by a competitor who did. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, okay, I get the framework, but how do I actually apply this to my specific organization? Where do we start? Which roles do we redesign? What opportunities are we missing? That is exactly why I built the AI Strategic Diagnostic. Here's how it works. You book your session by filling out the form linked below. I'll send you an intake questionnaire and we'll schedule a 90-minute diagnostic within a few days. Within 5 business days after that session, you'll receive your strategic diagnostic brief, a written roadmap with prioritized recommendations you can act on immediately. Not theory, not a slide deck full of buzzwords, a specific action plan tailored to your business. The link to book is in the description below. If you got value from this video, hit like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.